You are listening to Footy Talk, your place for the latest news, interviews and analysis from the world of AFL. And it is a Tuesday where we try and set the agenda and analyse the big topics of the week. And I'm joined by Nick Riewoldt. Hello, Roo. How's things going over there? Going well?
Good, mate. Going well. Gearing up for 4th of July this week, so plenty of excitement in the air.
Hey, bit party? What's going on? What do you got planned?
Yeah. There's always a big celebration. They go nuts for it over here. So we're heading down to Galveston and bit of golf. Kids are all on holidays. It's hot, so yeah, we'll be hanging out, mate.
Yeah, nice, very good. Hey, plenty of footy going on. It's off its head at the moment. What's happening with this season? The logjam between 3rd and 13th. Everyone can still make finals. Teams can all still make top 4, and we've got 2 runaway leaders at the moment, although the Sydney Swans look fallible, but we'll touch on them shortly. But as always, we like to start with a thought of the week, and just watching the end of the Gold Coast Collingwood game, again, the Magpies trailing, hit the front, and then couldn't quite get over the line. But I got the thought, first of all, listening to Damien Hardwick, and then I'll chat about it after this. But let's just take a little listen to Damien Hardwick post-game after their win against the Pies.
God, they're incredible, aren't they? The way they come back. And it's funny, I spoke to Clarko during the week and Daicos. Hint to other coaches, when the game's like that, tag Daicos, tag DeGoey. They are unbelievable the way they get and they work together. So we tried to get it done, we just couldn't get it done. You know, they're incredible players. And
this might not be the biggest call ever, Roo, but are we underselling what Nick Daicos is actually doing as a footballer? Because watching that final quarter and him almost single-handedly getting the Pies over the line, it got me thinking. There's been a lot of chat the last sort of 18 months about how many times Collingwood have come from behind and won when they're trailing throughout the game or the third quarter. And just speaking to some Collingwood people and having a look at it, nearly every single time, Nick Daicos has been the most significant factor in their come-from-behind wins in these games. And even just looking back to this year, so I spoke about the Gold Coast game, but all that talk about North Melbourne game a few weeks ago, 54 points down. He kicks 2 goals in the third quarter and then absolutely torched North Melbourne in the fourth quarter. The Carlton game earlier in the year where he kicked that amazing goal on Sam Walsh and he had 10 disposals. You go back to the grand final last year when Brisbane hit the front. Of course, it was Nick Daicos with a handball and some of his kicks to set up goals. Even Anzac Day last year when they were 28 points down, he kicked 2 final quarter goals. Like, I know it's not a massive statement, but could we be underselling how good and the actual impact he is having on this Collingwood dynasty that we're going to look back on and say what a remarkable period it was for the Pies? But it all centres around Nick Daicos.
Yeah, which is pretty extraordinary when you consider some of the other players he's got around him that have been really significant as well. I mean, DeGoey and Pendlebury and some of these guys in really big moments that have stood up. I mean, are we underselling it? I don't know. I mean, I think he's pretty well celebrated.
I know he is, but that's the point. Yeah.
You think we can be even more effusive with our praise? I mean, gee whiz, what else can you say about the guy? But I guess what you're saying is are we underselling the sort of the intangible, the leadership, the driving of the effort and the backs when the backs are against the wall? He's the one that's really being that sort of fire starter and igniter.
The will to win. You know,
maybe we are, because I think that's one that's impossible to measure, and maybe that part of it is it's hard to define, it's hard to articulate, it's hard to put a metric around. So potentially, I reckon Bontempelli's had pretty similar sort of elements to his game that we have celebrated. So maybe the more and more that body of work grows, where he becomes the one in big moments to stand up, that the praise will start to catch up with the achievement. But gee whiz, I'm not sure what else we can actually say about the kid, because he has been so amazing.
And that's the thing. I'm not sure. We've all praised his football ability and how good he is. I'm more talking about the match-winning moments or the clutch moments. I mean, in NFL, they talk about, fourth quarter quarterbacks, the trailing and their ability to drive, winning drives and all that down the field. Or basketball, you're always known by your fourth quarter and clutch match-winning shots, and Jordan and Kobe Bryant and all these guys. In football, we don't really have that because there is so many players on the field and we don't look at it that way. But if we were to look at the most clutch players of all time, you could almost argue in his 62 games, he's had more, swings in momentum off the back of, his performance in fourth quarters or late in games than you could argue about any other player that's played. And he's only in his third season. That's probably something that I just thought of that you go, it could be next level stuff if we really delve into it and drive into some numbers and influence.
Well, you could do that, Joey. You're the numbers man,
I know,
so you could get together with Hoyne from Champion, and you could delve into sort of late in games and his player ratings and all of that sort of stuff. There's a bit of homework for you.
I might.
We are qualifying it, but you could actually go in and quantify what it actually looks like from a numbers point of view. So I like it. I like where your head's at. If we can find more superlatives to wrap around Nick Daicos, why not? Because he's been amazing.
It's just a thought, and that's all we're doing here. Thought of the week. What about you? Where are you going with your thoughts today?
Yeah, well, mine's close to home, and it centres around Max King and the Saints, and the fallout from the weekend, and the fallout really from the year, and I guess Max's career to date. A few people now are starting to entertain the idea for both parties, and I'll come at it from St Kilda's point of view around, Max King being mentioned as possible trade bait, bring in a number of early picks. And I think it's one that would get squashed really, really quickly. If someone was to walk in the door at St Kilda this week and say, hey, should we start to think about Max and his future at the club? I think it would be squashed so quickly that you wouldn't even be able to blink. He's not going anywhere. I mean, I understand that he would be disappointed and frustrated with his form, that certain St Kilda people would be frustrated with his form. I've been, critical of not necessarily him, but, forward craft and things like that in the past, which I think is reasonable. But he is such a big part of the future of that football club. We know that it's a work in progress. They're struggling to score. They lack talent up the field. No one knows better than me that you rely on good delivery at times. Yep, he can be more competitive. He can fight harder in the contest at times, and that's going to be part of his challenge as an individual player. But for the Saints to get to where they want to get to, they need to bring in more talent, not get rid of talent that they already have there at the football club. So I don't think he's going anywhere, Joey.
Yeah, he won't. He will not be going anywhere. You can take that to the bank. But you're right. No doubt he's out of form and his body language and his effort can improve and all those sorts of things. And he's not alone. There are some other Saints players, particularly in the forward half of the ground, that are also struggling. But you're right. It's amazing how quickly, and I get it. It's content. It sounds good to sort of throw him up as, should he be traded or, even talk that he should look to go to another club because the system that he's playing in or that the team he's in is not as good and not moving the ball. It's a bit, I think, far-fetched because, he just needs to find a way to get the best out of himself, and the coaching group and the team need to help him. Because when I just had a quick look this morning, Roo, over the last 3 seasons, if you take a 3-year sample size, he's still 10th in the competition for average goals and 7th in the competition for average contested marks. Like, he can play, and you can't find them. What are you going to do, trade him out and get some draft picks and try and find the next player that's capable of kicking 50 goals and being a contested mark player? It's almost impossible. So you're right, there's a lot of work to do to get the best out of him, but you still need to continue to build with Max King in the forward line, and he needs support. I liked Rowan Marshall playing down there, Rui, on the weekend.
Yep, good call.
He looked good. So maybe it's more important to find another ruckman now. Tom Campbell getting towards the end, but just getting a competitive ruck to maybe allow Rowan Marshall to play as more of a second forward, second ruck might be something that can help St Kilda in the future. But no, Max won't be going anywhere. We are all supporters and we all get frustrated at times, but he's not alone being a player down in form. He did kick 10 goals in the previous month before that. But yeah, he's having a rough trot. Maybe his shoulders and some injury and confidence are affecting him. Speaking of confidence, I want to ask you about another young key forward at Essendon. We saw Nate Caddy play a couple of weeks ago and looked terrific against the West Coast Eagles, and then they decide to drop him. Can that affect a young, talented key forward to be coming in and out of the side early in his career, or do you just think that's all horses for courses, part of the development?
Yeah, well, I mean, of course it can affect him, but it depends on him. It depends on the player. If the player's resilient, if the player's mentally tough enough, if the player sees it for what it is, and that's an opportunity in a team that's currently, a top 4 team and pushing towards a finals berth and is capable of achieving anything this year, if he views it that way, well, then there's no problem. There's no issue. He's getting some exposure. He's getting a look. He's getting an opportunity. But if you want to be sort of that glass half empty, woe is me type, well then, yeah, you can let it affect you in a really negative sense. So, look, I think it's fine what the Bombers are doing. Give him a look, give him a taste. If he grabs the opportunity, great. If he doesn't, well then, there's no harm. But you are bound as a football club when you're in that position to play the team that is going to give you the best chance to win. Now, if that means that, one or two players, crack the shit because they're in and out of the team, I mean, that's what team sport is all about. It's about the ultimate prize. And, I think the Bombers are playing it beautifully. Give the kid some exposure while you're still competitive. Great.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if he comes back in Friday night. Massive game against Collingwood. Huge crowd, because I don't think having Draper in that forward line as the second ruck and key forward works. Showed some numbers on first crack. He's almost the 100th player in the competition out of 100 when targeted going inside 50. He doesn't get it done as a forward. They need two rucks. So I think Brad Scott has to make a call between Todd Goldstein or Sam Draper. They've got Peter Wright, they've got Stringer, they've got Langford, and then maybe you can play Nate Caddy as a third or fourth option. Get him some games, and it might be a better look inside the forward 50. Hey, speaking of confidence, what about team confidence? I mean, we're talking about this wild season and wild swings in form. Geelong 7 and zip, and then they looked horrible for 6 or 7 weeks, and then they bounced back against Essendon. The Giants a bit the same. You look at the Hawks now, and they are absolutely airborne. Melbourne going the other way had been ordinary, and then they play a strong game against Brisbane. Is it something that we don't talk enough about because we can't see? But how big of an influence is belief and confidence within a group and within individual players that leads to wins and losses in a season?
Yeah, it's huge. I mean, it's huge showing up to a ground. I mean, I think it's multi-layered. I mean, there's confidence in those around you when you're able to sort of build faith, trust, respect amongst the group, that you look across and you know what each guy's going to deliver, and the more and more that body of work grows, that you show up every week and you look around the locker room and you really do. You walk into the locker room thinking, there's no way they can get near us today. If you bring what you can bring, if you bring what you can bring, and they're not going to get near us. And that's a really special thing, that when you get a hold, it's really hard to get. But when you get it, the ability to just wring the towel out and squeeze everything out of it is a really great feeling. And the clubs that have it at the moment, it's special. That's when footy's really enjoyable, and it's a really special thing to be a part of. And it is real, Joey. I mean, it's not. You say you come out every week and everyone's an equal opportunity. No, the teams that are in the form and the teams that have that level of confidence, they without doubt have an edge before the game's even started.
It's like you said early in the year on this podcast, spoke about teams that really believe they can win the flag, which teams actually genuinely believe, and which ones hope and think they can, but don't really have that belief. And sometimes you need to, put it all together. And sometimes too, the historical sort of connection can come back. Like for Geelong, even though they've been down on form, a lot of those guys have got an inner belief in each other because they've been there and done that. Same with probably Melbourne to an extent as well. And then there are some teams like the Bombers and some others that maybe are still, not quite sure because they haven't got the historical success behind them to completely trust one another that they can get it done on the big stage. That's why I think Friday night game against Essendon v Collingwood is massive, because I thought Essendon were ready against Geelong to take a scalp and have that real belief. But again, they just failed on the big stage, and that's why there are still some question marks on the Bombers. Hey, just quickly, the other game I want to touch on was the Sydney Swans Fremantle game. Big win by the Dockers, missing their two basically all-Australian calibre key defenders, Alex Pearce and Brennan Cox. It was a massive performance by them, the youngest team of the round, Fremantle, it must be said. But it just showed the Sydney Swans they are gettable. Yeah,
so two things I think to come out of this game, Joey. Are the Dockers, are they real? Like, if they can roll up and beat the Swans with the form that the Swans have been in, can they win the flag? Can Fremantle go all the way this year?
Well, it's back to your point. Do they really believe that they are good enough, or are they sort of going, we're still a young team, we're talented, we're good? That's them. Do they actually believe they are good enough? Because the talent is there. They're well coached. It's just whether, like you just mentioned, they have that real belief in one another that they can get it done. But wins like that make a huge difference.
Yeah, and so then that leads me into the next point. I think the Swans are a team that have that belief, but do the Dockers provide a blueprint? Is there a blueprint now to beating the Swans?
It's a little blueprint that other coaches can look into. We've spoken, and I've done a lot of stuff, Rui, this year on how much influence Heaney, Goulden and Warner have had on this team in regards to their score involvements, their direct score assist and scoring themselves, and just the influence of their performances on the Swans winning. So all three of them had a down day, led to a loss. The numbers are not just for Sydney, but for a lot of teams. If you can take away two of the big three in your team and they have down days, history shows it's harder to win. So whether that is, if it's not rocket science, but if Cripps and Walsh have down days, if you can take away their influence, if Daicos can get beaten, but if you can limit their influence, that goes a massive way. And there were some sort of matchups. They didn't really have any full tags going, Fremantle, but they were focusing on those three players and took care of them and said, well, the rest of the team are good enough to beat us, so be it. And it just showed, particularly in the first half, that they weren't up to it. So maybe it is something that other teams can go to. We want to talk about the double tag. When is someone going to go and tag Heaney and tag Goulden and say, right, we're taking away you, and it might impact some other areas of the ground, but if the others are good enough to beat us, so be it. But it was an interesting watch and interesting to see how they back up now, the Swans, in the next few weeks. Hey, we will take a break because we want to do a little bit of real talk, shit talk after this. But if you are listening on Spotify, please hit the bell to be notified when we drop a new episode. You're listening to Footy Talk. If you do have a question for us, make sure you jump on Instagram at footytalk_pod or on TikTok at Footy Talk Pod. Here with Rui. We're going to play real talk, shit talk. And I'm going to start with you, Rui. Hey, Jimmy Bartel is correct in saying that the AFL needs to get rid of games starting at the exact same time. There were 2 games Saturday afternoon, 2 games Saturday night, starting exact same times. We've got to find a way to be better than that going forward. Real or shit talk?
Yeah, but I think it's shit talk because it's in the AFL's self-interest to not cannibalise itself. So there has to be a reason at times, whether it's scheduling or fixtures or flights for travelling teams, whatever it is. I'm sure that the AFL wouldn't schedule games starting at the same time unless it was absolutely necessary, because we know how valued the relationship is between the league and the broadcast partners, Seven and Fox Footy, Foxtel. So they would do everything they can. They would bend over backwards to accommodate eyeballs on the TV or attending games. Yeah, I think they would only do it if there was a really, really meaningful reason to schedule them at the same time. So I reckon that one's shit talk. One for you, Joey. So on the AFL again, the AFL have made the right call in not releasing their Monday explanation videos around umpiring and so forth that have been delivered by Laura Kane.
No, that's shit talk. They should have continued to do that because they did say they were going to be transparent. I think fans have the right to know, particularly with the season that we are having and the rule changes and interpretation changes. They need to come out. And so we had to hear from Brad Scott last night on AFL 360 because he got a phone call from the AFL which free kick decisions were right and wrong in the controversial Geelong-Essendon game. Now, I don't know why the AFL just couldn't come out and say, yep, we thought the Ridley tackle was correct. We thought the Jack Bowes one was incorrect and the Draper one was incorrect. We got them wrong. And then we all go, oh, okay, all right, you make mistakes. We get that. Instead, they've gone into hiding and they're not even going to explain it, which I don't like. I think they need to.
Why have they done that? Why have they gone into hiding?
I think the heat that Laura Kane copped after her explanation of the non-50-metre penalty call in the Collingwood North Melbourne game copped a lot of backlash. And I think they've probably felt, well, we're only adding fuel to the fire. We're only creating and helping add more stories around umpiring. And as you know, sometimes it's better to say nothing. And, that way you're not, creating or adding to the interest already in umpiring. And they're hoping that it'll make it quieten it down. But I don't think that's really going to work.
Nope.
One more for you. I want to ask you was, what was I going to ask you?
Bont.
Oh, the Bont, of course. Hey, Rui, this one's for you. Bontempelli. He, again, has played through injury. He was a touch-and-go game-time decision with a back injury and came out and was best on ground after having the flu game 2 weeks ago.
Yep.
He's the best player in the competition at playing through adversity.
Now, I'm going to say shit talk only because we don't know what everyone else is dealing with.
Good
so
answer.
what I will say is he is incredible at playing through adversity because he's done it, whether it's illness or whether it's injury. I mean, his performance very, very rarely fluctuates. So I think anyone that's able to play with that level of consistency is inevitably and undoubtedly great at playing through adversity, because very, very few players go through without some sort of niggle, some sort of injury. So the guys that are really consistent, they're the ones that are able to regardless of how they feel, they perform at a high standard. So he's great at it, but I'm not prepared to say he's the best at it because I don't know which other guys are dealing with significant issues as well. I love the Bond. That's not a knock on him. He's amazing. Last one for you, Joey. Ollie Dempsey, best on ground performance, is now the outright favourite for the Rising Star.
No, that is shit talk. I think Georgie Wardlaw still deserves to be in front. He's missing this week's game as well with the concussion. He wouldn't want to miss any more games, Georgie, because Ollie Dempsey is absolutely breathing down his neck and he's now outright second favourite, and rightly so. But if Georgie Wardlaw gets back and plays the footy he was playing the last 4 or 5 weeks before his concussion, he will win the Rising Star. He is a fan favourite and a cult hero. Hey, just as you are my fan favourite, Rui, you're my cult hero as well.
Thanks,
Love seeing you as always. Hey, remember tomorrow Abby Holmes will be with Jack Heverin to take a look from a player's point of view. Until then, enjoy your Tuesday.
See you, bud.
See you, mate. Thanks for watching Footy Talk with myself and Rui. New podcast episodes dropping every Tuesday, so make sure you tune in.